Purview, high energy coming through. Get ready for the tech review.
Welcome to Coast, a show where we speak about all things data security in the Microsoft stack. My name is Beau Fall, and I'm a technical specialist at Microsoft, and I'm joined by my co-host, Lou Mercury. Lou, how's everything with you?
Everything is rocking with me, Beau, especially given that new theme song. I'm Beau's colleague here in Melbourne, and I also speak about all things data security in Microsoft Purview. The new theme song, Beau, just in the spirit of AI, I think it's a keeper. We'll leave it at that.
I think, and we had a few tests of it to try to find a good one that like matched the show. We had some coastal sounding ones, we had some other ones as well, but I think this one's where we've landed and I'm pretty happy with it.
Well, we are talking AI, so I think it's appropriate. What's new, mate?
I think the main thing I want to raise today is that we're decoupling the DLP and Defender processes within Windows. So starting in June, they're going to be decoupled on Windows devices. So you'll see two processes on those Windows devices now. And this is going to be msdlpservice.exe and msmpeng.exe. So there's not going to be any changes to the deployment, and most of the time you won't actually have to do anything to even benefit from the decoupling. But if you're using a firewall, non-Microsoft anti-malware, or application controls, you might need to add the additional process to your allow list, especially if the Defender for Endpoint process was included previously. So shouldn't have any impact unless you've already got exclusion rules in. If you do, just make sure you're adding the new process in to make sure there's no issues going on.
And this is going to help improve the performance of DLP, right? That's what's motivating this change.
Yeah, I think it's a balance between the performance of DLP and also troubleshooting. So because they were the same process, it was much harder to narrow down exactly what was preventing something working or troubleshooting. So this is to alleviate that.
Okay. Yeah, and if you're using Microsoft Purview in our DLP solution, of course, I'm pretty certain there's a notification in the Purview console in the alerts view. So do check out those alerts, also the admin center. And I think Beau will drop a link in the chat window anyway. So
yeah, and I've raised it a few times just because if it does affect you, you'll notice pretty quickly. So if it is, just make sure you're adding it to that allow list to go through. Okay. And with that, I think let's move on to today's session, and I'll let Lou introduce what he's running through.
Yeah, indeed. I don't know about you, Beau, but I've been having a lot of conversations with my customers around securing and governing data in the age of AI. It's kind of a theme that's been running ever since we announced Copilot, but even just more broadly, just even third-party AI. So it's really important to and I think we talked a bit about this last time actually, but to have really good visibility over what's happening with AI in our workplace, especially in the context of even just thinking about in terms of sanctioned AI versus unsanctioned AI, almost like the shadow AI kind of situation that we're all sort of faced with. So with that need for better visibility and consolidation of policy and strategies, we've released something at Microsoft called AI Hub, and I'm pretty sure most of you in the audience are aware of this already, but I thought today we'd do a bit of a walkthrough, have a look at this thing. So with that, I'm going to share my screen, Beau, and try and do this as smoothly as possible because I'm a professional. There we go.
There you go. It's up.
You see my screen? Fantastic. All right. So I thought what we do is actually walk through a couple of iterations of this. The first one is, what does it look like for someone who's coming to AI Hub sight unseen? What's that first run experience like, if you like? And then have a look at the AI Hub itself with a bit more data in there, some information and some insights. And for this episode, I think we'll just dig into some of the policies it creates as well. So what we're seeing here is a tenant where, I haven't even looked at AI Hub before. So in terms of finding it, we're at purview.microsoft.com. This is the new Microsoft Purview portal. We should all be cutting across if we haven't already. But in amongst all the solutions here on the homepage, you'll find AI Hub front and center. It's currently in public preview, which means it's available to everybody, but supported. And the first thing you'll be faced with here is the getting started guide. So, what are the things that we need in place to get the insights and the visibility here? And the first thing we need to think about is enabling auditing. Most customers and most of you watching will already have this in place. So you're probably seeing a green tick. But then we've got some other options here that we need to think about. And there's a bit of an implication here around whether I'm thinking only about Microsoft Copilot for M365, or I've got concerns about third-party AI as well, because some of these prerequisites have significance depending on what we're looking for. So obviously we want all 4 ticks green. Beau, you were saying? Yep.
We should probably call that as well. So when we're talking about third-party AI, it's other LLMs across the internet. Think of things like ChatGPT, Google Bard, stuff like that.
Yeah, not necessarily bad things, but in the context of AI Hub, we're thinking about our data and whether we're okay with our corporate data or our sensitive information moving into those third-party LLMs.
Yeah.
So look, the very first one here is the Microsoft Purview browser extension. And with all of these options, you'll get really good documentation here by hitting these links. But really, this is about giving us visibility over my activity with third-party AI assistants. So the implication of not doing this is I won't have visibility, but I will still see Copilot interactions, just to be clear. Easiest way to handle this is just using an Intune policy. There's lots of good guidance here on how to do that. Silent install, just push it down to Edge or Chrome and just have it there for all users. Lots of benefits regardless. The next one here is the onboarding one. And again, if you're playing with Purview Endpoint DLP solutions or our Insider Risk solution, this is probably already green. But if you're not, you want to think about this, because this is about providing visibility over what's happening at the endpoint itself. So a lot of our insights come from the service end of the equation. So for example, I might be removing or downgrading or upgrading sensitive labels on sensitive files. I'll see that while it's happening in SharePoint or OneDrive for Business. But if I'm offline and doing it on my endpoint in my local OneDrive for Business, I won't see that activity. We need the onboarding of that device in order to see that.
Just to call that out as well, if you're using endpoint DLP, like you mentioned before, these will already be onboarded. So if you're looking for activities like copying information to USB and stuff like that, this should already be active in your portal now. It should be nothing new.
Absolutely. And great guidance here as well. Follow the links and you'll get there. The next one here is around getting visibility around data discovery. And this is where we start to think about, well, AI Hub can give me some guidance on what policies I can create and why I need to create these policies. So we're going to actually use AI Hub to generate some policies, and they're very low risk. And the aim of these policies is to generate insight that we're going to see in this console or in this dashboard. And those insights and the dashboards we see will inform our policies after the fact. So in other words, I'm going to see behavior as a result of these policies that might lead me to build some insider risk management policy to control that behavior, or DLP policy to control that behavior. So it's a starting point. So we're given some examples here of what's going to be created. We're giving some detail here about the policies we're going to create. If I click create policies after reading the what to expect, when I click create policies, we're going to be given some guidance here. And look, just like every good cooking show, I'm going to switch over and show you one I've baked earlier, because this might take a little while. But in this other tenant, while I let that run the background, I'm now moving to a situation where I've satisfied all the prerequisites that we just talked about. And when I jump into my policies, we're going to see an aggregation here of the policies that are being created. So these aren't policies that are AI Hub specific. What's happening here is we're actually dipping into the existing Purview solution stack and creating policies there where appropriate. So if nothing else, I want you watching this to be reassured that, hey, we're actually leveraging capability that's already there. And what we're doing is building policy, which gives us focus and control over AI behaviors. Once again, using existing solutions. If you've already onboarded, There's nothing more to do. If you're already using Insider Risk Management, our DLP solution, nothing more to do from a solution point of view because it's already there. We're just building these policies. So once again, the policies that we're talking about, we get one in Insider Risk Management. This gives us visibility around browsing in AI assistance. And as you can imagine, this is going to require that browser extension for us to see what's going on.
Yeah.
Insider Risk Management, by the way, for those who haven't been across this, is not going to block any behaviors. This is not a policy which is going to interrupt your workflow or people's day-to-day. This is a policy that's going to provide insight and provide information.
And it's important to call that out as well. And the way we always try to tackle these things is we need visibility first. Once we have visibility, we can make those educated decisions on what it should actually look like and enforce policies from. So we never say jump straight into enforcement of a policy. Get visibility first, make an educated decision, enforce where you need.
Indeed. Perfect. DLP, we get two policies here. One is discovering sensitive prompts in AI assistance. That's on. And once again, this is not a policy that's going to block. It's an auditing policy, which generates the data that we need to see in our AI Hub dashboard, which I'll show you in a minute, by the way. I keep talking about it. I haven't shown you yet. The second one here is around adaptive protection in AI assistance. This one is in testing mode. So once again, this is about generating data. It's not going to be blocking anything. It's in simulation mode. The communication compliance, I actually think is a really interesting one.
Yep.
Because this is looking out for unethical behavior in Copilot, and it helps to think about Copilot as another employee. So in pretty much the same way, if I'm messaging Beau over Teams and I'm asking him for insider information because we're doing a bit of stock price manipulation because we're that important.
All the stocks.
Exactly. But if we're doing something inappropriate or even harassing each other, in a workplace harassment sort of context, communication compliance is designed to look at that interaction and then generate the alerts and generate insight and alert an administrator or an investigator to look at that interaction and decide whether it needs further investigation. Copilot is just like another employee. So if I'm typing in prompts into Copilot and it's inappropriate, not from a harassment point of view, but maybe because I'm trying to access sensitive information, and Copilot's responding, hopefully correctly by saying you don't have permission to use that, so I'm showing you nothing. The fact that I'm actually asking the question is enough to potentially generate an alert within communication compliance. So super important, super useful. And just to give you a sense of where these policies are, and I've mentioned a couple of times, this is more of an aggregator than a policy engine in itself. So, I've got these tabs already open, and first port of call here, I'm looking at Insider Risk Management, and in the policies node right here, you'll see that in amongst my existing policies, and, those of you watching, you've possibly already got policy. You'll just see an extra one being created for you right here. So AI Hub, browsing and AI assistance. When I look at DLP, here are all my existing policies. I've got quite a few, but way down here, you'll see a couple of them created here. Discover sensitive prompts and adaptive protection. These are both created by the AI Hub Getting Started wizard. And you'll notice here one is on, that's the auditing one, and this one is in simulation with notifications. And lastly, communication compliance. I'm in the policies node here. And again, lots of existing policies here. You get a sense of what this thing's about, by the way, people inappropriately harassing each other, so on and so forth. And also, just a quick plug for communication compliance, because it can also be used for user-reported messages. If you've got a whistleblower policy in the office, in the workplace, I should say, this is the ability for someone on a Teams chat to right-click and say, this message that Beau just sent me is problematic, and I want to report this to someone to investigate and follow up.
It's also really good for the things like harassment and stuff like that, that you might not have a policy specifically to automatically call out. If that's happening to an end user, that end user can report that manually. I think the other thing that I'll do as well, and it's a shameless plug, but these other technologies that Lou's talking through now, we have videos of on the Coast to Coast channel as well. So if you need to go a bit more in depth in things like insider risk, check out one of those videos as well.
Yeah, for sure. Or let us know in the comments if you want us to revisit some of these areas. You'll notice here with user reported messages, I've got 3 pending. I'm not going to look at them because they're probably going to be quite offensive because that's what we need to do when we're testing this stuff. But I want to draw your attention right up here to AI Hub, unethical behavior in Copilot, and this second policy here that I've created as well, right? So just to come back to the hub itself, just to point out once again that, that getting started guide we saw earlier, that process provides a lot of detail. I invite you to sort of stop and read that documentation as well. Look at all the not the warnings, but the heads up on what's about to happen. One of the summary screens, in fact, if I come back, it'll probably tell me, here we go.
Yep.
So the policies have been created. That's the name of the policy it's created. So it's giving me the names. It's telling me what's been done, which is, really reassuring. And once again, read the documentation.
And I'll add that documentation in some of the show notes as well, if you want to quickly dive into it.
Perfect. So, and now that we've done that, what do we get? So I'm going to switch to slides here just to give us a bit of a look at the full picture, mainly because I don't have hundreds of simulated users in my demo lab to generate this sort of insight. So here's an example of the outcome of that. So remembering we've gone through, we've built the policies in the getting started guide. And the first thing you'll notice here, top left, is we get a nice little view of what kind of sensitive information is being shared with AI assistants. So in this tenant, there's a lot of information about something called Project Obsidian. This is a sensitive information type. Social security numbers, physical addresses, bank accounts. We get a sense here of how much of this data is floating around in these interactions. Now, this could be both with Copilot or with third-party AI. And on the right-hand side, we'll see that breakdown between, the different AI assistants. So Google Bard, ChatGPT, Bing Chat, Copy AI, Copilot. So if you're in a situation where you're trying to distinguish between or rolling out sanctioned AI in Microsoft Copilot, but you haven't yet blocked access to third-party AI, this is going to give you that breakdown of, do we need to clamp down on some of this other stuff because sensitive information is moving there? Are my policies appropriate? I know a lot of my customers are just outright blocking a lot of this access, but this is a way of doing, getting a little bit more nuanced about it. And perhaps we don't need to block as long as we've got control over what information's moving out there, right?
Yeah.
And then this is a breakdown of number of users versus other AI assistants. Now, this view is actually really useful for anyone who's rolling out Copilot for M365 or doing a proof of concept because you're looking for detail here on the uptake. I mean, we're paying for this thing. Are people using it?
Yeah.
To be blunt about it, right? Where's the value? So we're getting a view here of the number of users, including other AI assistants. And then across the right-hand side here, once again, a bit more of a view of the breakdown of the different AI assistants and the number of users. This reminds me a lot, Beau, of the early days of rolling out our CASB solution, Defender for Cloud App Security. And even those sort of conversations where, we talked about SaaS applications and by describing shadow IT. So again, sanctioned productivity applications, Microsoft Office 365 versus unsanctioned stuff that people are sharing with each other in the kitchen, sharing links over Teams chat. So similar logic here. We need visibility first. That visibility and the insight's going to inform the kind of policy we need to control this behavior.
And I think it's about that granularity you get, right? Like there's nothing necessarily wrong with using a chat GPT in your day-to-day work, but you probably don't want to be uploading confidential corporate data into some of those models, depending on what use case is. So this allows you to prevent the sensitive stuff going in there, but still allow day-to-day use if that's what your business decides is a risk that they're willing to accept.
Indeed. And I'll wrap up on this by coming back to my demo tenant here as well, just to show you a couple of other things that I think are interesting that aren't on the slide. In this environment, I've only got third-party AI. I'm playing around with ChatGPT and I think Google Gemini as well. But you can see here, I've got some recommendations already around some regulations, which are really important. Okay, I've got 12 interactions with sensitive information already in my demo tenant. I can click view details and and see that on the right-hand side here for a bit more of a breakdown. Yeah, the numbers are low because it's just me, punching away. But this reference to AI regulations, it's another call out to another solution in the Purview stack, and that's Compliance Manager.
Yep.
And in fact, let me do it this way. Oh, apologies, Beau, because I thought I had Compliance Manager open.
No, you're good. And we're adding in those AI. We already have a bunch of the existing AI regulations into Compliance Manager, where you can do your audits and stuff against it. So they're already added in. New ones as they come out get added in. We're relatively trying to stay on top of when those new ones come out. As you could expect, the scale of how often they get deployed and how often those policies get released can affect how long it takes us to put us into Compliance Manager. But all the main ones that are currently out are in there.
Beautiful padding. Thank you for that. The quickest way to get there as well, I should point out, is actually from AI Hub itself. There's a nice little view regulations button on the bottom right. I should have done that earlier. That's going to open Compliance Manager for me, which is handy. And it's going to actually pull up those regulations we're talking about. And once we see them, I just want to confirm that we can see them there.
Yeah, and it's probably worth calling out as well, Compliance Manager doesn't only have AI regulations. There's hundreds and hundreds of different regulations in there that you can look to meet some of the requirements you might have it as an organization. You can see here, it's highlighted the premium AI template, so you've got access into those, but there's hundreds of different regulations in there depending on your industry, depending on your country, depending on your organization. So it's worth having a look and seeing what suits you.
Absolutely. So that's a great recommendation here, actually, to make sure that we've got our compliance under control here as well. This view is, I find, really useful as well. So protect sensitive data, reference, etc. What this is showing me is the number of unlabeled files being referenced in my Copilot interactions. So again, if you're starting to look at Copilot, you'll know that when I do a prompt, something like give me help me build a PowerPoint presentation around AI Hub, it's going to draw upon other files within your organization if you've got permission to access them and you've got the access rights. And it might actually reference a number of other documents. Now, if those documents aren't labeled and protected, this is going to they're going to appear here in the number of unlabeled files here. Now, that in itself isn't necessarily a problem, to be clear. But if you're worried about your data governance of your data estate, this is once again going to give you good visibility. And maybe if you're seeing a lot of numbers here and it's bothering you a little bit, this might be a bit of a prompt to think about some of your auto labeling capabilities you may have access to, or think about labeling. And
it's
then
probably
further
worth
down
calling
here,
out there as well, Lou, that if you're an organization that has a relatively flat SharePoint structure, don't feel you're the only organization at the moment that's realized that and is going through the work to kind of fix that access management posture. We've got customers everywhere going through that exact same process now.
Indeed. And look, most of you watching have probably already started this journey or most of the way through regardless. And you'll see here at the recommendations here, what do I do about this? Well, think about some label policies. So create labels, deploy the policies, manually apply or auto label. So this is not necessarily an argument to, go straight to auto labeling. It's just once again, reinforcing the data governance activities you're probably already doing. Okay. So, Beau, with that, look, I've realized I'm sort of running over a little bit too, because once I get going on this topic, I find it difficult to stop because it is
it's a fun one. I like the whole AI story combined with Purview, so we'll keep talking about it as well. It's not going to be the last episode we cover it.
Yeah, and I think in future episodes, we might sort of drill into those individual policies in a bit more detail. So we've got this sort of aggregator here. We've got an idea of the views, but let's maybe talk about these policies and what else we can do here in a bit more detail, and things like e-discovery. How do we do that sort of forensic investigation? What's happening in auditing? What do we see in maybe other area, maybe communication compliance as well, and dig in a bit deeper and actually see some of these Copilot interactions in a bit of detail and do a bit of an investigation. So I'll stop sharing, Beau.
That's good to give visibility to people, because people are rolling this out now. There is discussions going on, at least with all of my customers pretty much, on what this might look like. So it's worth covering. Hey, if you are a customer, you're adopting this is what you can expect. This is what those policies will look like for you in an actual organizational environment.
Yeah, yeah. And final call out for communication compliance, because again, we've both mentioned lots of customers exploring Copilot for M365. A common ask is, okay, it's nice that I've got some insight, Lou, and even generating alerts is fine, but how much of that interaction do I get to see as an investigator? So, and the
Yeah.
answer to that's going to be communication compliance and maybe e-discovery. So I'm dobbing myself in for the next session. I think we're going to be doing Copilot communication compliance, I think, and
I think it's
e-discovery.
worth it anyway because we haven't touched on it for a while. So I think it's probably worth
Yeah.
coming back and closing that loop, show user reporting, show the Copilot integrations, show all of that sort of stuff. So I reckon we've teed that in.
All right. That's it from me, mate. I think it's time to wrap up and listen to that theme song again.
I think you're right because it's excellent. So I'll wrap up the show now. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I hope that explained what AI Hub is and what we're looking for. Expect more AI related episodes coming on. Like we said, communications compliance will be next. And we were going to release this earlier. New financial year kind of kicked us. So we kind of had to delay it by a couple of weeks. So expect them every 2 weeks moving forward. I know we made the promise last time, but we should be able to do it this time. I promise.
We
All right.
promise.
Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.